Welcome, wherever you are in the world. This is a new episode of Reality Shift. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, and I'm here with my co-host Anand. And today we are here on these episodes of Reality Shift with Sam Cole, the co-founder and CEO of FitXR, one of the most popular fitness app on the Meta Store, and David Wu, venture partner at Maveron, obsessed with reinvention of entertainment, especially when it comes to technology and the intersection of media, gaming, and social. So, guys, it is a real pleasure to have you here for this episode today.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Great to be here.
So we are gonna dig and dive into the story of FitXR, how the investment landscape evolved over time. But before we get into this, maybe you guys, why don't you, Sam, give us a short intro about you and about FitXR, and same for you, Dave.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm Sam Cole, CEO and co-founder of FitXR. We're really proud to be the inventors of the virtual reality fitness space, having operated in this world since 2016. We're really passionate about making exercise as fun and engaging as possible. And we really want to build the world's first mass market fitness product. We feel like the world needs a fitness product that looks at things through a different lens and appeals to a broader audience, particularly considering sedentary rates and obesity rates increasing, not decreasing. So yeah, really happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Sam. So, and Dave, what about you and Maveron?
And I'm David, and I grew up in the Bay Area, and I have been obsessed with how technology can transform the world. I started off very much a product and a tech guy, and then I spent many years as both a musician as well as an entrepreneur, and had one of the few companies that made it through the dot-com boom bust cycle, and finally sold it to Intuit, had a nice exit, and started angel investing, and then fell in love with the investing side. So joined Maveron about 12 years ago. Maveron is a firm that's been around for 25 years and specializes in investing in great consumer brands, and that's consumer products all the way to consumer tech. And my sweet spot is, as you mentioned, really on the consumer tech side, and how technology meshed with entertainment can transform the way we feel different experiences. And that's everything from fitness to music to entertainment to using game engines.
That's amazing. And by the way, we are here having a good conversation. So if anybody feels like jumping in with a questions, feels free to interrupt. So we are here. We have some questions idea, but it's not in no mean in a way like a completely structured conversation. So I want to start a little bit understanding how this journey from FitXR actually started, right? So what actually, Sam, what motivated you to merge virtual reality and fitness, and how this kind of like evolved in time since FitXR launched?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story actually, because it goes way back to kind of 2015, 2016. I was at the time working for a private equity fund in London, so not in tech and not in the fitness industry. And I was reading a lot about what was happening with Oculus and what was happening with Magic Leap, and became pretty convinced that the next computing platform after the smartphone was going to be some kind of augmented reality or virtual reality headset or glasses. And I got really passionate about thinking around how that could completely transform how people worked out, whether that was working out in a gym or working out outdoors or working out at home. And I think one of the funny parts of the story is that we, like probably many others, when they first hear about working out in a headset, think about, isn't it going to be weird to sweat in a device like that? Isn't augmented reality much more of a natural form factor? But it was actually the team at Magic Leap that steered us towards Oculus and said, hey, these guys are going to be consumer ready a lot quicker than we are. You should really start prototyping for this device. And once Samir, my co-founder, and I started prototyping and actually building fitness experiences in the DK2, we were blown away. And we had that moment that's become, I think, part of our secret sauce at FitXR, which is that it's really easy, even when these experiences were really rough and really rudimentary, it was really easy to get lost in the experience. And you think back then, these headsets were plugged into PCs, there were sensors everywhere, but you would lose yourself in the workout experience. And that's become, like I said, it's our secret sauce. It's why so many people who are new to fitness or have struggled with fitness in the past are able to build a habit with FitXR, because suddenly it's the first time that FitXR, that fitness in general for them feels easy and feels fun and feels engaging. Many of our customers will say things like, I've tried for so many years to form a habit around exercise, and it wasn't until I put the headset on and I just got lost in the experience, and I took it off after half an hour and I'm drenched in sweat and I just lost myself in the experience. They've never had that flow-like state before. And we experienced that really early on. And so that just enabled us to focus very quickly on, okay, let's go build for virtual reality, while still holding this big vision and this big excitement about how the landscape evolves over time. But let's focus on at home. Let's focus initially on boxing, and let's focus only on virtual reality.
Sam, I'm going to come back in a bit to have you talk specifically about the experiences. Before we do that, Dave, like you've seen the boom bust cycles across multiple waves of technology. You alluded to that in the beginning. Talk us through how you're seeing the XR landscape evolve, or have you seen it evolve in the last like 8, 9, 10 years?
In investment, there's kind of two different kinds of companies. There's bigger, stronger, faster, and there's brave new world companies, somebody once told me. And this is definitely one of the second category, which is a brave new world type of category. Another investor talked a lot about when you invest in these brave new world type of companies, you need to find a category that is both inevitable but also imminent. And that's the tricky part. I would say with XR, at least from the first time I started playing with XR and really became immersed in it, I could see that this was the future and this was going to happen. And it definitely felt that eventually the technology would get there and it would transform, spatial computing all the way to entertainment. But it's hard to tell the near future how quickly that's going to happen. And so a lot of the investment thesis is around finding companies that are going to be market leaders in this small market on its journey to becoming a large market, but also getting the timing and the tailwind so you can be there when that big transformation happens. It feels like we're getting a lot closer. In the early days, you mentioned that it was truly around crawling across broken glass to be able to even get the headset to work. Every time you would put it on, I remember I went and saw Ready Player One at a movie theater, and it was a big blowout where they had all these execs and they had Facebook and they had the author there, Ernest Cline, and they did a demo on stage and they had a green screen of death for an hour and a half while they were trying to get it to work. And my thoughts were, if the founders of Oculus and the author of the book can't get it to work, how can average people get it to work? I think since the Quest 1 came out, we're starting to see it's getting a little more mass, but it's still really, really the Wild West in the early days. And we're still a little bit in that early adopter field. And you can see, a lot of the work you do, that everyone's working on how do you make this a mass enough set of devices that people can do it and really embed it into their daily lives. And I think that's the step we're in right now. And I think content's going to pull us there. And I think the experiences themselves meshed with the technology eventually will transform this into a magical enough experience that people can't imagine living without it. But we're still really in the early days.
That's a great way of articulating the state of the industry overall, which is also a good segue to my question for Sam around the experience. One of the challenges that I have noticed is to explain XR to people who've never tried XR, which is a majority of the world, right? Sam, how would you describe FitXR to somebody who doesn't own a headset and has never tried it?
It's really hard, and I've thought for a long time about how to make this better. We'll storytell and we'll say, you put the headset on and you'll be transported to a location that has been purpose built to be inspiring and to get you into this flow-like state, and then you'll be guided through one of our workouts that straddle a range of different modalities, from boxing to dance to Zumba to high intensity interval training. And you'll be met with one of the world's best fitness instructors to guide you along that journey. But you hear these words, and I know, having said them many times, that they're so open to interpretation. And so the next best step here is I show you a video, right? And I show you a video where we've had an actor or actress, in front of a green screen, and we're filmed in the background, and it looks good. But even that is still a tenth of the actual overall experience. And if you think back to Peloton and their rise to success, getting people to try the bikes inside shopping malls was a key part of their go-to-market strategy early on. And they needed that. They had really high conversion once people tried the bike, but people didn't understand what the product was until they sat on it and touched it. And you think if that's true for a spin bike with a tablet screen, imagine how much more true that is for FitXR or fitness in general with a Quest. And I see a lot on XR Twitter or VC Twitter, and there's a lot of talk about, is it the content or is it the hardware? And I kind of have a more controversial view here, which I think for a lot of it, it's like neither. It's like getting people into devices, because
Yes.
whether it's the Apple Vision Pro or whether it's the Quest 3, I've done thousands of demos over the years, right? And people are blown away and want to buy when they try it. And so I think a big part of where we're at right now is building more ways for people to try the device. And then I think what you're seeing works so well in free to play and social is the kind of the referral loops that you've got going on. And so again, that's something that we're thinking about a lot at FitXR. It's like, how do we enable those referral growth loops so that we make it even easier for our customers to tell their friends and family?
You hit it on the head, Sam. Like, I think the single biggest growth rate constraining factor is more people in headset experiencing it. It's like falling in love. It's hard to describe it unless you fell in love for the first time and you're like, oh, that's what this thing is. Like, people talk to me about it, but like, okay, now I get it. That feels right. Yeah.
So maybe I'm curious, a follow up, right? You mentioned that you were trying. Sorry, Dave, you wanted to add something, or?
I was going to say, and you also get a bit of this network effect. I think that, we haven't quite got to AR yet. When you're on the VR side, it can be very isolating when you put the headset on, and you can also have issues around that you don't really know where. But I think the more people get on, it starts to become a social experience, and I think that's something that Meta is great at, and sees that vision before everyone else. But the difference of experiencing VR with multiple people, and even better, multiple people that are at different locations, is transformative. And I think we're just starting to see that as well. We're starting to see households that have multiple devices. We're starting to see friend groups that have multiple devices. And it is such a different experience. It becomes more of a not only a teleporter where you can go wherever you want, but sort of ability to bring everybody together wherever they are to do something together. And that's such a special experience.
At some
And
imminent near future, you're going to see the equivalent of the couch co-op LAN parties of the console
That's right.
era. Sorry, Gabriel.
No, absolutely. And I think that this is especially true for fitness. I mean, in, let's say, an activity that has inherently, let's say, risks with your surrounding, right? The way you move, the way you punch, the way you duck. So having also being aware of the mixed reality of let's say, no, of the reality around you, including people and the environment, I think it is very important. The question is, you guys at FitXR have recently created a studio specifically designed for mixed reality, right? So I was wondering, what was the response from people from being unlocked in not being just as in this isolated environment, but instead in their own environment doing an activity that was specifically created for that? What were people's responses?
Yeah, I think mixed reality has been something that we at FitXR, in terms of what it's going to enable for our customers from a fitness perspective, have been excited about for a long time. And Gabriel, you kind of touched on some of the reasons why. You can do different moves in an often more comfortable manner when you have full awareness of your surroundings. And we were fortunate at FitXR, because being able to work with Anand and other team members at Meta enabled us to start researching this really early on. And I think one of the things that we found was most compelling is the experience we've taken to market about 4 or 5 months ago, which is called Slam. It scans your room and transitions that into what we like to think of as like an adventure playground, where you've got cues positioned all around your room, and you have to run about the space and slam them into your walls. And it's super fun and really gets the heart rate going. I think the most interesting thing for me with the launch of Slam has been when we've been demoing it for new customers for the first time. Often when we put people into a headset and they are fully immersed and they're in full virtual reality, people will be a little bit timid. If you get the world's greatest boxer, and they will still be timid when they're punching because they just aren't fully aware of their surroundings. Yeah, like, am I going to punch someone in the face? What's going on here? Slam and mixed reality in general is the complete opposite. You put people who have never been in a headset before, and you put the headset on, and they just accept that they can see all of their surroundings, and now they've got virtual objects that are overlaid, and they will just run about the space. And we did some great testing with this with Meta, and we saw this exactly play out. We had one of the meeting rooms over in San Francisco, and people again would walk in, be like, "Oh, what's this?" Put the headset on and just start running about the space. And I think there's something that we're just starting to tap into with that, which is that it's a really, to go back to some of the things we were talking about before, about more people demoing and more people getting into headset. It's a really good positionary step. And so we think about this a lot for like our onboarding experiences, but also any kind of way that we can showcase the product to a new customer or a new audience. It's really powerful to be able to showcase them something like mixed reality and then let them choose whether they want to be into a fully immersive experience later on or not. So yeah, I think we're just starting to see how powerful it really is.
Let's talk about something very unique about FitXR. When people ask me like, "Hey, what is FitXR?" The way I describe it, it's a gym in a box. It's a gym you can take home. You're in your living room, you're in your home office, you put the Quest 3 or any headset on where FitXR is available, and it transforms your space to your personal gym. We've had investors on the show before. We've had the folks from Gorilla Tag before. You guys are the first non-game company and founders we've had on this show to talk about this, because I think what you're trying to do is the intersection of two industries, which is fitness, and you're using XR to transform fitness. Unlike games or entertainment, the thing about fitness is it is woven into people's lives. You are out running, you're working out in a gym, maybe your home gym. So you're actually trying to integrate into people's lives, as opposed to these experiences where you are transporting them into fantastical worlds where they're playing video games or watching movies or whatever. It's a very different experience class, because you're taking what's available today and making it so much better and trying to build habit. That's kind of how I think of like the fitness category overall and what you guys are trying to do with your gym in a box. My question to you, Sam, with that preamble is, how are you thinking about the fitness industry? Like, it's this classic thing of like software coming to a world that was analog, right? And we saw fitness evolve. So I'm curious to get your take on like, where do you see the fitness industry heading, and how do you think, like, what are they getting right or wrong, or what is their perspective about like XR as you work with fitness brands, and you've done some work with fitness brands in the past as well, right? So talk to us about the non-XR part of your world, which is fitness.
Yeah, it's certainly when I go and speak at a fitness event or are around other leaders in that space, like I definitely feel like an outsider. And I think that's a massive benefit for us, because I think the fitness industry at large has primarily competes over the same audience of people who are already exercising. And whether that's talking about gyms or the rise of digital fitness and the rise of connected fitness products through COVID and over the last couple of years, I think generally it's all fairly similar. I think it's topical because there was all the news last week about Peloton CEO stepping down and growth, despite good kind of underlying financial performance, growth stalling in that company. And John Foley, the CEO and founder of Peloton, once had this vision about taking that brand to a true mass market status and serving 100 million customers. And I think that's what the world needs. I think the world needs a fitness product that doesn't just cater to the 20% of people who are already actively exercising, but rather seeks to look at this through a fresh lens and say, why is it that it's so difficult for people to form a habit around exercise? I think the vast majority, like overwhelming majority of people, want to have a habit with fitness. I think this is the kind of, again, that one of the differences, like you set up, Anand, between games and fitness products or broader wellness products. People want to come in and want to form a habit around these products or services, but still, it's really difficult. And I think if you just look at the way that the fitness industry talks, it's all about no pain, no gain, and it's all about highly optimized routines that are fit for athletes. And I think for some people that's really great. But for a lot of people, it should be and can be far simpler. Um, so many of our customers say things like they didn't think exercise was for them, and for many people, this conditioning starts when they're in their early adolescence and they're at school and they don't find PE engaging and they're not good at sport and they start to think, hey, this isn't for me. But at the end of the day, fitness is just structured movement, and so it should be for everyone. And that's why I think, we talk to the team at Gorilla Tag a lot, and there's a lot of similarities between their view of the world and our view of the world on trying to get more people moving. And I think they're doing a lot of great work there by virtue of the fact that, you're no longer gaming with your thumbs, right? And so the definition of gaming and what this brings about, I think, is going to have, really significant physical and mental benefits in terms of the activity that it's driving, particularly for younger audiences. And my hope is that through these kind of experiences, and I think this is something that we would love to do more on as well, and being able to better serve younger consumers. But my hope is that more of these kids go on to not lose and not have that conditioning that so many adults that we encounter now have, and they don't have this belief that exercise is for them. But they think about this much more broadly, and they go, well, no, yeah, I did hate PE, and I did hate playing sport at school. But you know what? I used to get a great workout doing Gorilla Tag or Beat Saber. And so that gives me the confidence to know that exercise is for me in some kind of capacity. I just have to find what that is.
That's awesome, Sam. The show has this, as we look at the audience analysis, we found our specific niche where half of the people listening to the show are XR folks, and half of them are people who do not understand anything about XR but are in industry. So I can guarantee you there's folks from the fitness industry listening in on this episode. What do you want to tell them that they don't understand about XR, and how you can make that vision that you just talked about, getting to mass market reality with them? Do you have any messages for them?
I think if you look at the brands that have entered VR today, I think the ones that have done it successfully, and we believe we've done this with Zumba inside FitXR, and there's a few other examples I think who have done this very well, have gone, what are kind of the first principal parts of our workout routine? What is the core reason that our experiences are great, whether that's in a digital form factor or in a bricks and mortar kind of setting? And how do we reimagine what that looks like in VR? I think the brands that get this wrong when they make this transition go, well, it works on 2D and it works on a TV screen, and I'm just going to translate that experience almost one for one. And we ask ourselves this question a lot when we're developing new experiences at FitXR. We say, well, why would I put a headset on to do this? What is the difference between this type of content and this form factor as opposed to just doing it on my laptop screen, on my TV screen? And I think the brands that do that well do well, and the brands that don't struggle. But I do also think that we're at this moment in time, from probably an investor perspective and a fitness industry or other brands perspective, where I think there was this flurry of excitement that occurred around the Apple Vision Pro announcement and other things that were happening in the space. And I feel like we're in a holding pattern right now. And I think what will happen is we had a bunch of people reach out, if I roll back 12 months and then the 12 months prior to that, during that period, where people would say things like, we missed the Peloton opportunity, we missed connected fitness, and we really don't want to miss VR. And so there was real excitement there. But like you alluded to, there's this road of hype inside this industry and others has been exactly like that. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. And I think what is happening now during this building phase is that I think brands will be very surprised. They'll come in late, and then they'll be surprised that this thing has taken off. So I kind of anticipate that that's going to happen over the next 12 months going forward.
I'd probably add that, and Anand, this is more right up your alley, but I think that people's initial perception, and it makes some sense based on the AAA content that was out there, specifically around PlayStation and then around Meta, is that VR was a gaming platform. And so a lot of people had an immediate reaction, which is, that's not me. That's not for me. And then I think Apple had recently come out with the Vision Pro around this idea that a headset is a spatial computing platform. And it's a very individual use case, which is I can do my 2D apps on there. the real truth is that it's much more of a blank canvas, and people are finding the first categories of content that are going to pull people. But over time, I think this idea that VR is for me or VR isn't for me is like saying TV. I don't do TV. Well, there's so many different kinds of channels and different kinds of content and different kinds of experiences, and the experiences are even richer. That's why it's so exciting to me to see fitness and live music and all kinds of new categories, all the stuff that you love as well. And even on the AR side, you're going to see world scale AR, everything from going to an amusement park and augmenting that to playing with friends in your own environment. I just think that we're going to see that what people think of VR, XR, even the people that said that's not for me are going to realize that what it could be is much broader and much richer.
Dave, I think you just incepted an idea for an ad campaign. That's not for me. And then you strike that out.
That's actually a good one.
Dave, do you look at unit economics in the fitness industry and like, as you look at is that a comp you would use as an investor? So like, look, this is the TAM for the fitness industry. Here's the ARPU. XR could like lift it. Like, how do you look at it from an investor perspective? Is that the market you're trying to quote unquote disrupt
You know,
with FitXR?
I think that, as I mentioned before, this is a little bit of a market leadership in a small market becoming a large market. And I think that's the way to look at it. I think when you think of the TAM, you could start with the fitness market and you can go top down, bottom up and come up with a really, really big number. You could argue that the number is even bigger than that. I do think the business models of the existing fitness industry are a little rigid and tricky. I think that all the way from the two spectrums, from one end, the fitness hacker and life biohacker, which is sort of the Strava crowd, is where the most consumer success has been, but it's not that big a market. A lot of people drop off, and it's very hard to come down from that market because if you get the really hardcore athletes using your stuff, there's a couple challenges. One, they're really fickle and they're always looking for the next shiny new object, and that's a hard audience to get. And the second one is they don't like when the non-athletic people join their tribe or join their community. So it's very hard to move downstream without losing them. And so that's one end of the spectrum. So there's not a lot of venture scale businesses there. On the other opposite end of the spectrum, I almost compare this to playing music because that's my background as well. When you're a kid, almost everybody wants to learn how to play an instrument. Maybe not when you're forced as a little kid to play violin, but somewhere in high school, everyone has a dream of becoming a rock guitarist or a trained musician. But it requires habit. It requires a lot more work than you think, and you drop off. And I think the aspirational athlete is not that different than the aspirational musician, which is there's a lot of people out there that wished they could do the blank. It's too hard. It's embarrassing. You're not that great at it. As you get older, just being able to get into a car and drive to the gym that you signed up at New Year's because you had a New Year's resolution that you were going to get in shape and lose some weight and get stronger by week 2 is too much work. And so the majority of the offline businesses are based around non-consumption. You even talk about other businesses. You said, oh, this is the gym business model, which is sign up a lot of people because they aspirationally want to do this, but they never come. And so it's got great margins because people don't even use it. I think that what Sam's trying to do here in VR is very different than that. I think what they're trying to do is say, because of technology, we can actually build not an incrementally better solution, but a disruptively better solution that people are going to fall in love with and actually integrate into their daily lives. And so that's how we look at it. We invest really early and we are looking for transformational CEOs and transformational technologies that are going to make kind of what wasn't possible before possible now. And I think the big idea is because of technology, we can get back to kind of the young person's fitness is play. Fitness isn't work. Fitness isn't a chore, but fitness is play. And it's easy. It's as fast as you mentioned, kind of a gym in a box. I put this on and I have an amazing time for 30 minutes. And it's not crawling across broken glass. And it's not this horrible chore that I put off. And before I know it, I'm more fit. I feel great. I get my serotonin hit. I get my adrenaline rush and I'm ready to go.
Wow. Okay. let me just summarize a bunch of stuff across what both of you guys said. The first thing I heard is, look, the fitness market, the 80-20, 80% of the people who aspire, you ask them, do you want to be healthy? No one's going to say no, but it's really hard to be healthy. And then there's 20% who are grinding it. And I think you guys called it like the fitness hacker. And it sounds like the focus for y'all is the 80%. And it sounds like the fitness industry is currently focused on the 20%. And the story really here is, if you want to expand the pie as the quote unquote fitness industry, you want to get to the 80% because that's where the market is higher and you can expand. So go work with FitXR is sort of like what I took away from all of that. Does that sound about right?
I think that's right.
That's
I
right.
think it's really hard though. I would put out there that without technology transformation, it's been tried and it's really, really hard. I think people quit really early and are looking for a quick fix. You look at these GLP-1s and it's, oh yeah, I want to be in better shape. I want to look better. I want to feel better. Why don't I just take a pill? Why don't I just take a pill? Sure, there's side effects, but people are looking for a quick fix. So whatever you build has to be so delightful and so magical that people actually say, no, I like this better.
Sam, I do have also a questions regarding your journey, right? Overall, because I mean, as you mentioned, you're here since the time of the DK2, and I was curious also, what have you learned through this journey as a founders, both in terms of uh, what things have changed, what things have stayed the same, and maybe some advices that you could give to others that are doing the same or think of doing the same. What advice would you share?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that we've been really fortunate around was that when we built FitXR, we launched it on Steam in early access at a time where we were really uncomfortable about shipping that product experience. And Samir and I went back and forth about whether we were going to hit the button and submit it because it felt super early. And that was a very different time of VR's content journey and ecosystem journey. We could charge $20 for a download from the very beginning. So that was also a major milestone for us as a business when it meant we were able to start bringing in revenue for the first time. But we picked up the courage and we hit the button. And from that moment on, it was great for us in the sense of really being able to lean into releasing early, speaking to our customers on a daily basis, having very close engagement with them as we built next iteration of the product experience. And I think when I speak to other founders who are thinking about moving into VR today, the path is a little bit different, but I think via App Lab, I think it's a similar journey. And I think that mindset of shipping early and trying to have a very direct relationship with your customers, I see a lot of other founders mimicking that exact path and having a lot of success who have come after us. So yeah, I think that was probably the best thing that we did early on.
And maybe some of the things that you would say now with hindsight you would have done differently.
Yeah, I think Adam Draper, another one of our investors, kind of drills into the mindset of like focus, and he has the saying of be a cockroach, which is basically like, I think, pretty great advice for VR companies, which is just like survive. Survive as this thing builds around you. And I think for us, where we've made mistakes in the past, often comes down to trying to do too many things and having a lack of focus and being ill-disciplined around that. One of the things that we're really focused on at the moment is investing in quality throughout the application. And it's really, really fulfilling to be able to go back and do that, having gone through a number of years where we really focused on building up the width of the experience. But it's been amazing, both from my perspective, but I think the whole team's perspective, to be able to go through it and really obsess about the quality standards from everything from the first time user experience, through to things that our customers have been requesting for us for months or even years for us to fix. And so, I think focus would be the other one.
I want to add a comment to one thing you said, Sam, which is cockroach mode. One of the entrepreneurs I've worked with before, a gentleman named Danny Shader once mentioned, I thought it was perfect, is that companies really only go out of business for two reasons: you run out of money or you run out of heart, and you really need the grit to survive both of those challenges it's kind of every day of life. And I think that almost all the VR companies that I have worked with that are successful have kind of gone back and forth between cockroach mode, where you're really watching every dime, and kind of conquer the world mode, where you're just going really, really aggressive. And not just in VR, but the best entrepreneurs I know are almost all incredibly cheap because they know the value of money. And that swings with the macro environment, but really appreciates that one of your assets is money, but also wildly aggressive. And those sound almost like they're contradictory, but they're not. When you think about playing a game, sometimes you want to be, on the risk board, you want to charge the world, but sometimes you want to go back to Australia and fortify and build up your assets. But at the end of the day, you got to pick your battles. And when you go, it's time to go. And I think that's how it's been with XR, which is there are times that I've seen companies go in and out of cockroach mode, which is actually, we thought this next launch was going to change the world, and it didn't. And we got to watch our money because it's going to be almost impossible to raise money. And then it'll flip, and that something big will happen, and you got to catch that wave, and you better come out on top, because otherwise you're going to become irrelevant. And I think that having the mindset that there are a lot of, in these new markets, a lot of uncontrollable things that are happening in the macro, and you got to react really quickly and adjust the mode that you're in, I think is an insight that I think the best VR companies, as well as almost all the best companies that are doing great new things in markets that you don't know what's going to happen, tend to do.
So I suppose that, at this point what is how do you get the moment when it's time to be, I think you get it pretty easily when it's time to be a cockroach. I think that you get it because then you see the risk, you see the limit end. But when would you say what are the signals that founders should get in order to actually, now it's time to get out of it and start investing, spending, and being aggressive? How do you see that?
Sam, you want to take a crack? Or
I think, like Dave was alluding to, a lot of what's relevant to making that assessment is trying to read the tea leaves a little bit around what's happening in the macro. And so I think the way that we think about this at FitXR is new headset releases are massively significant for us. And so it's thinking about new headset releases timed with what's happening in the broader economy as it relates to, I suppose, consumer willingness to spend, but also in terms of cost of capital. And I think it's an assessment made like that. I think what we try and do more and more of here is again, like what Dave was saying, where we can interpret and we can respond really quickly. And I think trying to stay nimble and trying to align our product roadmap and what we're building with what's happening from a hardware perspective, I think has been something we've done relatively well in the past, and I think it's pretty critical to success.
I think it's somewhat correlated with the cost of capital. But I get asked this question a lot by VR and XR companies, which is, what is the funding environment going to look like for us a year from now? Is it going to be easy or hard for us to raise capital? Because what is the market like? I've heard the market's choppy. I've heard the market's down. I've heard the market's up. And what I generally tell people is, in a category like VR, the general macro state of the market in terms of, are a lot of startups getting funded, is less important than what are the tea leaves around XR in general. And I would say, for starters, you're going to need an investor that believes in this thesis around XR is going to be a transformational technology and a transformational platform. And so they already have a prepared mind. So what are they trying to do? They're really trying to underwrite, is this timeline contracting? And are we getting closer to some tipping points and some local maximums? And what are the tea leaves behind that? They're the things that Sam's saying, which is, are there new devices coming to market? Are there new modalities coming to market? Are there new players like Apple or, Asia coming to market or leaving the market? And I think all these macro environments are going to change investor sentiment around, is those tipping points coming closer or not around a thesis they believed in for a long time. And that's really agnostic to the general state of how is the funding market doing. I think we just saw that in AI, which is, you know, it was cold winter last year in the VC market, and no one was funding anything. But if you injected the word AI into your company, all of a sudden you could probably get funded, because people sort of started to believe that this long-term vision of AI was happening now, and they were going to miss the boat. And VCs tend to flip really quickly between fear and greed, and everybody was in fear mode, and all of a sudden on AI, they flipped to greed mode because they were afraid of missing the boat, and FOMO kicked in. And I think the same thing happens in spurts on the XR market, which is, it feels like cold winter. It feels like cold winter, and some catalyst happens, and the VCs take notice and say, I got to jump on that boat. I don't want to miss something.
This is a fascinating conversation. I think both of you all have talked a lot about the macro environment and the signals, whether it's hardware releases or the cost of capital, that creates a switch between cockroach mode and risk mode. The thing that I share with founders is the default, you want to say default alive. The way to say default alive is work the funnel bottom up as opposed to top down. And so like just focusing on day 28 retention and LTV, it should be the default mode. If nothing is happening in the macroeconomic environment, that's a tailwind, or even if there are headwinds in the macroeconomic environment, because if your customer is funding you, that's the best way to stay alive. And then you watch for macroeconomic shifts where you align yourself to something at the top of the funnel, whether it's like a growth vector, like more headsets out there, or whether it is, I mean, in the case of fitness, like every fitness company that is in digital should take this seriously enough to go work with FitXR or somebody else to like understand how to expand. That can be something that can happen regardless of what happens to the XR industry, because you have an audience, you're trying to reach an audience, and the brand has the channel to reach the audience. And as an XR company, whatever category it might be, not this probably just applies to like non-fitness as well. Like if you can work the funnel by default without the macroeconomic conditions being a tailwind, and then when the tailwind kicks in, you can just like double down. So, and I think of this as like working the funnel backward and all the levers that the founder has control over, because macro the founder can't control. It just happens, right?
100%. On your point about brands as well, Anand, it's like I think you're absolutely right on brands being able to come in and look at this and say, you know, we can go and reach this audience in a unique way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. But equally, I think like the shareability of content, if done well, is also is crazy in terms of the reach that content can receive, right? Like you look at what Gym Class or Gorilla Tag are doing on TikTok in terms of overall impressions, it's like billions of impressions. So if I was running a fitness company, I would think about it through that lens. It's like, okay, I'm going to be able to target this audience of people that I may or may not have access to, but it is a unique channel. And I probably can't access this audience otherwise. And also if I do it right and I make my content really shareable for this audience, it's going to generate huge effects, which just creates a whole lot of leverage on top of the whole project.
Go ahead, Gabriel. You're gonna say something?
No. Anand, if you have something in mind, I wanted to move to another idea, another question more towards future prediction and hopes. But if you wanted to add something, please go ahead.
No, I was going to go to the similar place. I have one question specifically for Sam around like habit building. If you believe that, you know, the way to control the destiny of your company is to like get customers to fund it as capital becomes more expensive, building habits in a category like fitness is so important. I remember back when the internet was born, and like, for example, Facebook had this magic number, right? Like if you made 7 connections and 7 friends, you suddenly became a daily active user of the platform. What is the equivalent concept for like fitness in headset? Like, is it number of sessions? Is it something else? Like, how do you build habit?
Yeah, it's for us, it's about number of classes at a really early stage of a customer's journey with us. And so if you do 4 classes in a 7-day window with us, during your first 7 days, and those classes might be as short as 7 minutes for one of those classes, then your usage retention and therefore subscription retention doubles, even if you drag that out to month 12. So we talk about this a lot around focusing on early user habit formation. It's really important for us, and it just makes logical sense, right? It's like people come to us, they're trying to form a habit around fitness. Some already have a habit with fitness. A third of our customers are exercising 5 times a week before they try FitXR. And then another third are sedentary. And so they have no habit around fitness, and they've often struggled with exercise in the past. And so the goal for both, right, is that we don't have to be an exclusive part of either of their fitness routines. We want to be a big part, and we want them to form a habit around the product from a usage perspective. I also think that what's interesting about VR, and I'm just going to look at it purely from a hardware lens at the moment. We talk about this as VR currently has a lot of activation energy. You have to seek out the headset purposely and put on the device, and you have to make sure that it's charged. I'm looking at my docking station for my Quest 3 down here, and it's like getting a docking station was the best unlock for me. Everyone who wants to form a habit with fitness and FitXR should go buy a docking station, because then the device is always charged, and I never hit that hurdle. But if you compare it to mobile, right, I can send you a push notification if you've signed up to my mobile fitness app, and you can instantly be in the content or in the application. And that doesn't work as seamlessly at the moment because we're not in the headset all day. We're not carrying it around with us. And so I think, again, for founders right now, I think if you invest in early habit formation or habit formation in general, or retention like day 28, I think it's going to pay dividends even especially on a long-term basis, as I think it becomes that activation energy of putting a headset on lowers and lowers and lowers and lowers. And I think that's going to lower because the hardware is going to get better, but also people are going to have these devices on for longer periods of the day. People will be working in them. People will be entertaining themselves, watching TV and sport in them. And I think then it's just going to be even easier to step from get a notification or want to have a feeling of wanting to work out or wanting to play a game and jump straight into the experience.
One thing I would add.
Go ahead, Dave.
One thing I would add is Sam and I have had a lot of conversations about this, but early on, how do you measure product market fit? And when you're really trying to embed habit and embed in people's lives, what does product market fit mean in this category? And we've talked a lot about explicitly measuring it. We know, from most great operations and startups that if you measure something, it'll get better. And so what is the right thing to measure? And one of my mentors, one of the best marketers I know, had always said, one, you have to measure product market fit. And early on, the question, it shouldn't just be a net promoter score. Net promoter score is a good way to measure, would you recommend this to a friend? But even better than that for an early stage company is how upset would you be if this product or this company went away? And the idea behind that is, I very much around what you're talking about, which is developing habit. I use an example in VR around the void. If any of you guys have been to Disneyland or one of these malls and tried the void, especially early on, which is a location-based experience in VR, and it was much better than anything else that was out there. And it was, you put your headset on and the whole room was mapped out and had physical props and stuff. I think there was a Star Wars experience, and it was incredible. It really felt like you're transformed to another experience, and you walk out of there and would you recommend this to a friend? 10 out of 10. What an amazing experience. But you do it once and it's a ride. Would you be upset if this went away? Not really. I don't really feel a great desire to do it again. It was a kind of a one and out ride. It doesn't have that recurrence that we're talking about. On the flip side, if you ask somebody, how upset would you be if this went away? And if the answer in the very upset was very high and very excited, Sam's product is kind of in best in class in that number. I think the goal is to get more people to feel this experience. But for a fitness product, I think we're 80+% of the people say, yes, I'd be really upset if this went away. There's not a great substitute for this, what we're doing. And it's actually an integral part of my habit in my weekly life. And if you took it away, it would really upset me. So I encourage people to really measure that. And then, in the digital platforms, you can do all this amazing stuff. There's been decades of learning on gamification of how do you increase habits. Meta's an expert and every gaming company's an expert, and you can do so many things to make people on top of the adrenaline rush and the serotonin hit and feeling stronger, feel great about what they just did and level up or get status. And I think you can embed all kinds of mechanics to make it even better.
So, guys, I mean, I think this was an incredible conversation, and it would be my absolute fault to not let you out without having an impression of what are your actual predictions for the next 3 to 5 years, like prediction of hopes in terms of XR, and I have a quick fire up to both of you. So I'm curious, maybe Sam, you want to start up? What are your feelings?
Yeah, I think if you go back to one of the things I talked about right in the beginning around our vision, one of the things we get really excited about is a world where we can deliver content to our customers, whether they're exercising in the gym, outdoors, or at home. And we can do that across a range of different devices, from a Quest 3 virtual reality experience. Maybe at the other end of the spectrum, we're looking at Meta Ray-Bans version 3.0 or 4.0. And so I get really excited about that. I think I said this to you, Anand, after the Oculus Connect announcement. I was like, when are you opening it up for developers for that Ray-Ban platform? Because I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of how we think about content creation that lends itself really well, where we would love to be building audio-only fitness content to guide and motivate customers on that form factor. And I just think for us, it just opens up different modalities, different spaces, and inevitably our ability to serve more and more customers.
Dave, what about you?
I touched on this earlier, but I think in the next couple of years, there's three things that I'd like to see happen, and I think are going to happen soon, and we're already starting to see all of them kind of emerge. The first one is XR isn't just a gaming platform. I think you really got to see it break out of this mindset that it's just for gaming. And I think we're starting to see that. I think the last couple of years have been transformative, and I think the next few years are going to double down on that and actually increase the velocity of that. And so I think that'll turn a lot of heads. I think the second one is that XR isn't just meta. I think that when there's only one player in a category, and I think we all owe a lot to Meta, what they've done to drive this, it's either amazing consolidation or it's not a big enough market. And I think you're starting to see there are going to be other competitors. And I actually think that's the best thing that can happen to Meta, is that we have major big players declaring that this is the next big thing. I think that's a really important event. And then the third one is that XR and AR emerges as a modality even larger. And I think we're starting to see a lot of the headsets start to get the pass-through technology to a point that it's useful. But I think you'll also see modalities in location-based and convergence of this, Ray-Ban glasses and a VR bulky headset, and that the form factor may actually end up being closer to the Ray-Ban's glasses. I think people are surprised by how much they like the Ray-Ban glasses. And there's nothing in the lens yet, but I think there could be. And I think that there's a lot of smart engineers working on that. And so I think as you start to see AR emerge, non-gaming categories emerge, and multiple giant players, all of a sudden it's sort of default to now is the time. And I think that's going to be really exciting.
Can I just say one thing on that as well,
Of course.
Which is just that I think from an AR perspective, the form factor around fitness is really interesting, because people, if you look at what cyclists will wear when they're out on the road cycling, it's like big, bulky glasses. And I think if you think about fitness first devices as the Horizon OS platform opens up, I think that's really interesting from a VR perspective, but I think that's really, really interesting from a AR perspective, where I think some of the form factor constraints might be more relaxed. People might be more willing to engage in bulkier, more bulkier devices because they serve a particular use purely around fitness.
Guys, I mean, thank you very much. I think we're going to see more. We're going to reach out back when we'll see how this is evolving, what happens with Ray-Ban glasses, and in general, what happens with FitXR. I'm pretty sure that when it's around after Connect, we're going to have many more announcements to discuss. So it would be a pleasure to have you. But guys, thank you very much. Anand, any last words for today?
We haven't talked much about this, but FitXR has a subscription as a service model, which is very venture scalable. My hope and my wish is like a born in XR first company that reaches like internet scale valuations and growth. That's what I want to see happen, because then you realize that like, oh shit, this is the next platform, right? So that's my hope and wish.
Amazing, guys. Thank you very much. And so check out FitXR. And of course, thanks, Sam. Thanks, Dave, for being today with us.
Thanks, Sam and Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You guys.